This is the analysis of Haydn's 104th Symphony, the movement number 4. The structure of this movement is in sonata form, which is like the first movement. The sonata form structure has some elements of monothematism and imbalance, with some material bearing resemblances to the first movement. The written tempo for this movement is spritzo, which means animated. The overall time signature for this movement is cut common, which is 2-2, with the overall key being D major. The instruments used in the orchestra for this movement is 2 flutes, 2 oboes, 2 clarinets in A, 2 bassoons, 2 horns in D, 2 trumpets in D, timps, and of course the string section. There is elements of folk music. This is shown by the 2-bar drone that starts the final movement. Here is the plan of the sonata form used. As you may know, sonata form consists of the exposition, the development, the recapitulation, and the coda. In this movement, the bars that are used are 1 to 117, 118 to 194, 195 to 264, and 264 till the end. Within the exposition, it is split up into 3 parts: the first subject, the transition passage, and the second subject. While in the development, it is exploring new keys while manipulating the thematic material. But in the recapitulation, it is a repeat of this, but with different keys to keep contrast. The keys that are used are the home key for the first subject, changing key for the transition, and the dominant for the second subject. And then the development goes through a whole range of keys and then ends in the dominant, while the recapitulation and the coda are all in the home key. The exposition begins with 2 bars of introductory drone bass. This is played on both horns and the cellos. This drone that starts the music is associated with folk music and is setting the scene and the mood of the piece. This drone is continued for 10 bars. The 3rd bar of the piece, the first subject is then introduced by the violins. This first motive is a 2-bar question with a 2-bar answer. This 4-bar phrase is then repeated, with the last bar being different for a different cadence. The range in this section also shows a very similar style to folk music again, which also suggests an imperfect cadence, which is half closed at the conclusion of the antecedent phase, with E being the 5th of the dominant chord. At bar 11, the theme is then moved up an octave for the oboes to play and for the violins to play up the octave, with a counter melody in the violins' 2s. This indicates Haydn writing for a string quartet, as there is only 4 parts, with the cello doubling the bassoon and the violin 1 and the oboe playing the same part. The counter melody has a minor 3rd in it, which creates dissonance. The range in this section also shows a very similar style to folk music again, which also suggests an imperfect cadence, which is half closed at the conclusion of the antecedent phase, with E being the 5th of the dominant chord. The transition section begins in forte with the full orchestra playing, emphasising the stamping of the rhythm figure X. This shows the beginning of the development of subject 1. The harmony here is now in the subdominant with alternating tonic chords, still over a tonic pedal. In bar 28, staccato scalic quavers run down in the strings and bassoon, leading to fortissimo tutti section. This section starts with 2 bars of sustained tonic pedal in all parts except for quavers in the symphony. In bar 31 begins a further development of subject 1. As the imitative texture continues, the crotchet conjunct movement in bar 36 in the violins and oboe 1 with augmentation of figure Y. At bar 44, the dominant pedal of the dominant key is finally established in E major in preparation for the modulation to the relative key of A major. Figure Z is now introduced in the violins at bar 44. To note, there is a flattened second Neapolitan fifth. In bar 47, there is a flattened second in A major. The second subject runs from bars 54 to 101, with subject 2A being bars 54 to 62. This is the first part of the second subject section, with the music firmly in the key of A major, which is the dominant of the tonic. The material that is used is based on the first subject, which shows monothematicism, with the differences including the theme being played in the second violins with the counter melody in the first violins. The pedal note is firmly evident with quavers in the timpani. In bar 65, there is a development of the quaver motif, figure Y, building to contrary motion, quavers at bar 73 above a dominant pedal in A major. The perfect cadence in A major is reached at bar 81, followed by 3 bars of 3 detached crotchet chords played in tutti, ending on an E major to give an expected resolution in the following bar to A major. Subject 2B runs from bars 84 to 101. This is the second part of the second subject section, as the material has not been heard previously and is very contrasting. The starting key for this section is B minor, moving from the previous E major chords via an interrupted cadence to F sharp major chord, which is the dominant of the B minor. The dynamic here is quieter, with the instrumentation also being reduced to just strings and solo bassoon. The rhythms used here are mostly minims and semibreves, as the main focus here is the harmonics, which can be noted in the movement of the string bass through a very stepwise movement. The codetta runs from bars 102 to 118. This section has repetitive content utilising the shaping idea of figure X, rounding off the exposition. There is a 6-bar phrase from 102 to 107 over a tonic pedal in the key of A major, which is based on subject 1, with the first 2 bars a diminution of subject 1 played by the flute 1 and flute 2. Minim motif is shown at bar 108 with chords 1 and 5 in A major at bar 109, which shows the beginning of the final passage of the exposition section, with the repetition being a 2-bar phrase. At bar 118 there is an A major chord, which is the dominant of the home key, and the final motif is now transferred to the things where it is heard in unison, leaning smoothly to a sustained note of D in the horns as heard at the start of the movement. All exposition section is then repeated. The development section is bars 119 to 194. The first 2 bars of 119 to 128 begins with subject 1, hearing imitation combined with materials from bar 3 and 4 of subject 1. The passage begins with just strings, then violas beginning the layered entries with the motif from the first time bar at the end of the exposition. The harmony here continues in A major through a G natural, though a G natural is being played in the first violins in bar 121, which signals the move back to D major. The whole orchestra joins in at bar 122 with the subject 1, with hints of the counter melody in the second violins and first oboes, with the pedal of D in the horns and trumpets. A C natural in bar 123 signals that the music is moving forward, overlapping the tonicization of E minor in bar 128. In bars 129 to 155, the quavers from the counter melody from bar 13 is heard at bar 129, with the development moving motifically and harmonically. In bars 129 to 130, figure Y is ascending starting on F sharp with a diminished harmony. In bars 131 to 132, figure Y is ascending starting on E with a minor harmony. In bars 133 to 134, figure Y is descending starting on a C natural with diminished harmony, which is the opposite of bar 123 to 130. At bars 139 to 155, continuous quavers in the violin show an idea of figure Y at bar 139, a diminished chord in bar 148 in the violin 1. In bar 158 there is a Neapolitan 6th chord, with 2 bars later a C-sharp 7th chord, which is the dominant. In bar 165 there is a typical Haydn bars rest. In bar 167, it is the beginning of the development of subject 2b, where the harmony is shifted up a tone to the chord G sharp major, which has 8 sharps, which is the dominant of C sharp. This then moves to F sharp major, to then arrive at B minor, at bar 173. The melody that follows this section is then described as a series of leisurely imitations, as the descending movement varies through to the bass. In bar 185, the bass arrives on C sharp, which remains the pedal for 8 bars. As the music moves through the key of F sharp minor, then moves to a PP chord of C sharp major, which is the dominant, then an interrupted cadence to the root note of the submediant chord in D, with a swift pivotal return to the sustained note of D in the horns to signal a return to the first subject and the arrival of the recapitulation section. Bars 193 to 194 are exactly the same as the first 2 bars of the whole movement. The recapitulation section is bars 195 to 264. The first subject is bars 165 to 202. This is based on bars 11 to 18, with the first 8-bar phrase being omitted. The orchestra is more full, and the overall is 8 bars shorter than the exposition. The first subject B is bars 202 to 220, based on bars 19 to 26, and remains in the tonic key. Changes begin at bar 210 when the quaver develops continues, with the second part of the transition, bars 31 to 35, being taken out to make a shorter transition. There is a dominant pedal from bars 215 to 220, which bring the second subject into the tonic key of D major. The second subject is bars 221 to 264. The second subject is bars 221 to 264. Subject 2A is bars 221 to 228, and they're based off bars 55 to 62. With the main theme now in the horns, bassoon and low strings, as the material has now been reorchestrated. From bars 228 there is a 4 bars of detached chords, and figure X is re-emphasising the clarinets, trumpets and timpani, and the music now moves towards the tonicization of A major, the dominant key. Subject 2B is based on bars 84 to 101. This is exactly the same left as the corresponding section in the exposition section. It is not in the tonic key and has shifted up step by step and by an interrupted cadence to land on the chord of B major, the submediant chord of the home key, which then acts as a dominant pivot to bring around the tonicization of E minor, but it soon returns back to D major at the bar 251 to 253. The passage then ends with an imperfect cadence, again arriving on the dominant chord of the home key in bars 263 to 264. The codetta from the exposition is taken out of the recapitulation. The coda is bars 265 to the end. This section lasts for 70 bars, which is quite a substantial conclusion to his last symphony. It begins with the thematic material reflecting the codetta from the exposition, which is bar 102. This section consists of a variety of material that has already been heard. It begins with thematic material reflecting on the codetta from the exposition, bar 102. With this subtle harmonic surprise, not to only the home key may be as expected after the dominant chord in the previous bar, but with a shift to chord, the secondary dominant chord. This moves to the chord 5 in bar 267, which is heard full orchestra above a dominant pedal. At bar 276, the idea is adopted by a woodwind trio, flute and both oboes, as the imitation continues for 11 bars. This moves around a lot of keys and begins in the tonic key, but then hits G major at bar 281, before returning to the dominant of the home key in bar 286. When the full orchestra returns in tutti in bar 287, note another interesting shift as the music plunges into a forte rendition of the quaver momentum for bar 143, and this time in the key of D minor. The last 2 bars of the movement are repeated several times to conclude the movement, along with a final reference to figure Y, which is bar 326 to 330, and figure X, being bars 320 to 331. Over a tonic pedal, the little triplet idea in bar 330 is a new rhythm, though typical of this era. Indeed, it may be derived from the inverted version of figure Y, which has been utilised many times in this movement. The movement ends with a stamping rhythm of figure X extended onto a double F perfect cadence played tutti by the whole orchestra. Thank you for watching my video on Haydn's 104th Symphony on the 4th movement.